Well, what is up, everybody? If you didn't notice, the bald white guy that we have on today is not Mark Seavercrop. It kind of looked similar, a little different though. I mean, Grant's definitely better looking. That was easy to pull off. But
It's a blessing and a curse.
yeah. Anyway, we are joined today by Grant Baldwin, the author of this book. I gotta get it on. Okay, it's like right here. When we're like really narrow like this, I'm like, yeah, it's this book here. What's the name of the book, Matt? I don't know. It's right there. We'll just block my face. The Successful Speaker. The reason why he's qualified to write this book is because he is a successful speaker. And that's not just a joke. No, he really is. I mean, he's one of the most successful and prolific, speakers of our generation. And so I'm super excited to have him on today. I'm joined today by him, of course, and Robbie Miles, who I guess I had just forgotten, Robbie, that you used to do some work with Grant. So that's kind of cool.
This is true.
It is.
So, man,
we actually hung out up in Idaho at one point, right?
Yeah, we did.
You've been up to Coeur d'Alene?
I've been up that way. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Was it in Spokane?
It was in Spokane. Yeah, you were doing a speaking event there, and
okay,
I was like,
right.
"Hey, you're only 30 miles away."
Yep.
So, I feel bad because I've been to Coeur d'Alene once and didn't see Robbie.
It's a pretty area up there. See, if you're going to be up that way, you gotta make sure you see the people.
Yeah. I felt like because we got in, we had like flight delays and all that. Got in super late, and we were there for like a day and a half, and. So Robbie, you and I didn't meet until last November officially. And the first thing I said is, "Oh my gosh, you're so tall." I was like, "You're a giant," because you can't tell on here,
I just remember we went to like some, like, it wasn't like a waterfall, but it was like a.
Oh yeah, we went to the Spokane Falls where they have.
Is a waterfall?
Yeah, hydroelectric dam and stuff there.
Yeah,
and it was wide open, which is the best time to see it.
Yeah. So it's just a romantic stroll, looking at waterfalls, that sort of thing, in downtown Spokane. It's just kind of what Robbie and I do.
Just the two of us,
You guys take a blanket, something.
Watch the stars.
Stay warm. Yeah, that's good. Well, welcome, buddy. So listen, today, we're going to talk about speaking, and that's obviously. If we had this conversation 4.5 months ago, 5 months ago for sure, would have been a completely different conversation. When this book came out, it's written for a pre-COVID, world.
Sure.
And so I want to start off kind of there. I want to start off with like just what your journey has been like over the last few months and how much, this whole thing has changed for you. Like what are some of the ways that this has changed your whole career, your livelihood in many ways? I think it's obvious to know the downsides, but I really want to focus on the upsides for you. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the past couple of months has certainly been interesting, obviously in the world, but certainly in the speaking industry. So one of the challenges that obviously has happened is that live events are, for the most part, just been put on hold. And so a lot of live events, especially like, bigger events, anything more than, a couple dozen people are just for the most part not happening. So whether that means that they have been postponed or rescheduled or canceled, that's been the case with a lot of different events right now, which is there for so many speakers. It's just thrown a complete wrench in things where they maybe have been at a completely full schedule. I know for a lot of speakers that we work with and speaker friends who had a full-time schedule and were doing, 20, 30, 50, 100 gigs a year. And now all of a sudden in the matter of a couple of weeks, they just had a ton of the next several months drop off the map. It was a lot. It was a lot to absorb, and still is a lot to absorb as speakers are still trying to process what the new normal looks like. A couple just big picture thoughts I would give just kind of in my observations of working with speakers and just kind of the landscape of the speaking industry. Is that the speaking industry is one that has been around for a long time and will continue to be around for a long time. So if we can go all the way back to like the Greeks in like 500, 600 BC, one person standing on a stage talking to a collection of other humans has been around for a long time. It's gone through wars and depressions and recessions and 9/11. And so this is obviously a little weird, but I have zero doubt that speaking will still be a thing on the other side of this. This will always continue to be a need in the marketplace. One of the things that with all of this that has happened, that has made possible, is virtual speaking. Now, virtual speaking is one of those things that has not, it's been around, but it hasn't been like really on the forefront of events and for people's radar and speakers' radar. And now all of a sudden, the opportunities that has been presented, where for many events, like virtual is the only option. There's not really a great alternative right now. And for some events that they're saying, hey, we cannot, we can't safely do anything due to liability or just comfort level or whatever until there's a vaccine or something like that. So
Yeah.
it really is just kind of a unique time. But because of the opportunities that virtual has allowed, I think actually there's a lot of upside that virtual presents that you don't necessarily get from live in-person gigs. So for example, when you go do a live in-person gig, you have to be there. You have to physically show up. So like the event, I live in the Nashville area. So going up to Spokane, where I met up with Robbie, is not like a quick, 30-minute drive or anything. Takes a good chunk of a day to get out there, speak a time or two or whatever it was, and then, fly back. And so all that to do one, and if I remember correctly, it was like a breakfast I was speaking at, something like that. And so it's a lot of work to get up there, to speak once, to come home for that one thing, versus virtually. Like I know of several speakers who are doing multiple gigs per day from their home. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. The three of us that are here right now, we're all in different parts of the country, but we can do this virtually and can impact more people without having to logistically get everybody in the same space. So virtual is definitely it's created a lot of new exciting opportunities for speakers that weren't previously around.
Man, I love that. I mean, it's so true. Like I know one of our goals this year originally was to get on 300 stages, and roughly we wanted about 30 to 40 of those to be, physical stages. Of course, that went totally away. So we did one, and then and that went totally away. But it's so true. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine trying to be on, like, do 3 or 4 speaking engagements in a single day.
Yeah.
But now it's like, you do 2 of them, you eat lunch at home.
Yeah.
You do one, you play with the kids for a half hour, and then you do another one, and
Yeah.
you didn't, like, I don't know about you, like, I love going to events. Like, I love live events, but I have about a 3 or 4, like, as far as like attending, I have about 3 or 4 of those a year that I can, like, it's about 1 a quarter. They're exhausting.
Yeah.
They're just exhausting, and traveling. Like, I don't care. Kevin Harrington, the original Shark from Shark, the guy travels, 100,000 plus miles, a year. He's a rock star. It's still just exhausting.
Yeah.
To go to different time zones and all that and try to do all that. So guys, if you have any questions about speaking or whatever, it could be about crafting a talk, or how to kind of find, I know one of the things that Grant talks about in the book is just like how to find that subject matter, and we can go into that if you guys want to. So ask your questions, for Grant that you have. I have one, and then Robbie, I know you have a few as well. One, like, I could go so many different ways with this, so I'm gonna ask this one first. The book is called The Successful Speaker. You're a successful speaker. You teach, courses on speaking. You've been speaking now for like 15 years, probably?
Yeah, somewhere close to that. Yeah.
Because you started really, I mean, you were like, 12 when you started.
Give or take.
What does being a speaker mean to you? Like, when you really think about it, and somebody says, I want you to answer this question in 2 different ways. Number 1, what does it mean to you? And number 2, when somebody asks you, you can start with this one first. When somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you answer them?
Yeah, normally I tell them I'm a speaker, and I work with I run a training company for teaching people how to find and book speaking gigs. And so that's the core of what it is that we do. There's a one of the things that's fun about this is there's no shortage of people who are interested in speaking, and there are people who say, I want to be a full-time speaker. I want to do, when I was speaking full-time, I was doing 50, 60, 70 gigs a year, and that was 90, 95, 100% of my revenue and income. And so that was my world as a full-time professional speaker. And there are certainly people who want to do that. Then there's other people who say, I like speaking, but I don't want to do that much for logistically, I don't want to be gone that much, or my job or career or business or whatever just doesn't allow me to make that work. And so, but I still love speaking and I'd love to do it. I'd love to do, 5 gigs or 10 gigs. I just don't know. How do I find those gigs? And what do I speak about? How much do I charge? And who hires speakers? And just kind of the ins and outs of the speaking world. And so that's really the core of what we do today. And so it's not a one size fits all that, hey, in order to be a speaker, you got to do all these events, it's just kind of figuring out what makes sense for you, what it is that you're wanting to accomplish. So I know some speakers who do, 50, 60, 70, 100 gigs a year. They want to do, big keynotes, and that's it. And others that they would prefer to do more speaking for like lead generation. Maybe they have coaching or consulting, or they have a book that they want to offer. And so it's all lead generation for another part of the business. And some speakers that say, I don't want to do some big, keynote for 1,000 people or something for 45 minutes or an hour. I'd much rather spend, 2, 3, 4 days, with a small group of 20 people, really going deep on a certain topic and really getting to know these people. So again, it's not like, if in order to be a speaker, you have to do it this way, and this is exactly what it looks like. Like, there's different pieces that you can kind of pick and choose from in order to kind of figure out like what makes sense for you, like what resonates for you, what it is that you want to accomplish as a speaker.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I was going to ask about, how with this, as we change to this virtual landscape, how's that changing for people, as they enter speaking where they're not speaking to 40,000 people, or, is it easier to get into workshops and stuff like that? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there are, because of virtual, I think it is a little bit simpler right now to get into it because logistically it's simpler. And what I mean by that is that, one thing, to take a step back, I think it's important to note for everyone's sake that part of being a speaker and part of being an entrepreneur in general is that we're in the problem solving business, right? You need to solve one specific problem for one specific audience. And so one of the things that we talk a lot about with our students is that you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse, not the buffet, meaning that if we were, if the three of us were looking for a good steak, like we have a choice. Like we could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 different things that they offer, and they're all mediocre. Or we could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really, really well, right? Yeah. So they don't do lasagna, they don't do tacos, they don't do pizza, they don't do cupcakes, they do steak, and that's it. And so that's really what you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself as a speaker. And again, not just as a speaker, but as an entrepreneur in general. And to that end is, again, because as speakers, because as entrepreneurs, we are in the problem solving business. What's important to note is just because live events aren't happening today doesn't mean that those groups, that those organizations, that those schools, that those churches, that those events, that the audience's problems have suddenly gone away. Right? Just because it's not happening. It was supposed to be, there's an event that was supposed to be happening today, and it got postponed for several months. Now all of a sudden the audience is like, whew, I'm all back. I'm healed. I'm fixed. The problem has gone away. This disappeared in my life or my business or whatever it may be. Like, that's not the case. The problem still exists. And as speakers, we have an opportunity, and I would say a responsibility, to still solve that problem for that audience. And so if we can't do it in person, then one of the opportunities that we do have is to do it virtually. And so for one of the other things that's great about virtual speaking is that, if you, with a lot of live events, because there's so many details and logistics that goes into it, most live events book speakers anywhere from 3 to 6 to 12 months out, right? There's just a lot going into it. Whereas whenever it comes to like a virtual thing, it's literally like sending an audience a link, right? So this is the type of thing that we see could be organized within a week, within a couple of days, within a couple of weeks. And so there's a much shorter lead time to be able to book and present to an audience. So so if you're a brand new speaker, you don't know what you don't know, like, that's okay. I think it's important to note that, as a speaker, whether you're doing something in person or you're doing something virtually, everybody starts from zero. Everybody starts from scratch. There's no speaker that you look up to, you admire, you respect, and you think, oh, they are just naturally that way. They are, they have talent that I don't have yet. Maybe they've been doing it for a while, and maybe they, have some natural, charisma or personality or whatever. But there was a time where they had none talks, and then they had one talk, right? Everybody starts from zero. Everybody starts from scratch. And so if you're like, I'd love to do some virtual speaking, but I've never done anything, that's fine. Everybody starts from zero, and you can do that too.
Yeah, that's such an important reminder. I mean, I listen to a lot of Tony Robbins, and it's really easy to look at where he is now when when he was doing in person. He's doing the United Center in Chicago, 20,000 people. And everything is so produced down to the second. Like, if you watch his talks now, he'll say something, and like there's a music guy like that plays, the music that goes right along with what he's saying right then. Right. Like, that's choreographed. And that is like the pinnacle of the profession when you can do stuff like that. But if you go look at his old stuff where he's wearing like the too short shorts, you know, he looks like a high school softball coach. Let's be honest. That's really what he looks like. Got the you know, the Navy hat on. He looks like a dork.
Yeah.
And for all you high school softball coaches, sorry, but you do kind of look like dorks. And you know, and he's on there and it's like there's no production. You know, this is back when he clapped normal, you know. I mean, it's like it's fun to look back at that and go, you know what? The content was still really good.
Yeah.
The message was still powerful. He was still changing tens of lives.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and again, it's the same thing that's true, you know, with virtual as it is for, you know, in-person stuff. That again, everybody starts from zero, and so, you know, any speaker, author, writer, athlete that you look up to and admire and respect, like the reason that they're good at their craft, that they've spent a lot of time doing it. So it's not fair to compare where you are to where they are. Like it'd be the same as like, I really enjoy playing golf. And I play a decent amount of golf and I'm okay at it and I'm trying to get better at it. But if I watch, you know, the pros on the weekend play, if I watch Tiger play and I'm like, oh, he's just better than me, that's not fair. It's like, yeah, he's pretty good. Like he's probably worked harder at it than me and he's probably been at it a lot longer than me. And so it's not fair to be like, well, he's just better at me, so therefore I can never play golf. Like also realize from a speaking standpoint, and again, this is not exclusive to just speakers, just entrepreneurs in general, is just because someone, you know, maybe you look at and you're like, oh, they, you know, they're a better author than me, or they're a better podcaster than me, or they're a better blogger than me, or they have a bigger email list than me. Like that's okay. Like the pond is big enough for all of us. There's not one speaker who can speak at anything and everything, right? So there's plenty of room to go around. So don't be, you know, negative about, you know, competition or other speakers or other entrepreneurs who are doing something similar. Like there are absolutely plenty of opportunities for you to exist in the marketplace as well.
That's awesome. Where do you play around there?
I play a bunch of different courses. I play as much as possible. So I'm certainly addicted. Yeah.
I don't know if I literally grew up at Legends Club.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I played there last weekend. It's a great track.
Yeah. I love that. So cool. So real quick, guys, I just want to point out, if you want to grab a copy of this book, and because we're going to get into like a little bit of it, but like when I say a little bit, I mean, it's many pages. I don't even know. It's like 250 pages. Yeah. 270 pages. Okay.
Boom.
So it's 270 pages. That would take us, at my rate of reading, this would be a 47 and a half hour Facebook Live. Well, I'm a little bit of a slow reader, but I absorb the information though. So I got that going for me. Just go to mattmcwilliams.com/successful speaker. We'll drop that link in the chat for you. Grab a copy and you can take a deep dive into some of the stuff, because there's nothing in here, literally nothing in here that's not relevant today. Like, does he talk about virtual, you know, I mean, a little bit, but, you know, just, you know, in fact, I'm literally looking at one part where he talks about the video of a presentation, but, you know, there's nothing that's not relevant. The mechanics are the same. So let's talk about some of those mechanics, and let's talk about exactly who you were just talking about, like the absolute beginner at zero, you know, none speeches, as you said. What is their first step that they need to take to get ready to be able to do these virtual gigs?
Yeah. And so inside the book, we outline this process that makes the acronym SPEAK, SPEAK. And so this is what we would call the speaker success roadmap, and just kind of a framework that we teach through. So the S is to select a problem to solve. And we kind of touched on that earlier, but being really, really clear about who you speak to and what's the problem that you solve for that audience. The next part of the process is the P, is to prepare your talk. So be clear on not only what the talk is about, but also how the kind of the format that you're going to be presenting it. So are you wanting to do more of a keynote, or more of a workshop, or more of a breakout, or more of a seminar? Are you wanting to do more like physical in-person stuff? Are you wanting to do more virtual? So just kind of understanding the context of how you want to present the solution to the problem that an audience may have. The E is to establish yourself as the expert. And so this comes down to two key marketing tools that speakers need: is you need a website and you need a demo video, a website and a demo video. So in this day and age, if you don't have a website, like, you don't exist. People won't take you seriously. So you need to have a website and you need to have a video, and a video can be a little bit intimidating and daunting, but a way to think about this is think about it like a movie trailer, right? You think about what the purpose of a movie trailer is they take like a 90-minute, a 2-hour movie, they boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. So within the 2 or 3 minutes, you have an idea of the plot, the theme, who's in it, that sort of thing. But the goal of the demo video and the goal of the movie trailer is to make people want to see more. And so that's exactly what you're trying to do, is trying to just give someone a little bit of a taste. You know, like none of us need to see, you know, like a 3, 4, 5 minute trailer to determine like whether or not we want to go see a movie, right? You just need even like 30 seconds to get a sense of like, oh yeah, that looks good, versus like, I ain't never gonna watch that, you know, which is fine. Like you just need a little bit there, because one of the things you have to remember is that as in the for event planners are in the risk mitigation business, and so when they put someone up on stage in front of their audience and hand them a microphone, they're taking a significant risk. You know, it's the same thing that, like, you know, if you guys come to town and I say, oh, you got to go to such and such restaurant, and you go there and it sucks, like it reflects badly on me. But if you have, you know, hundreds of people who are watching it, and then all of a sudden, like, man, we're never going to listen to anything Grant says about restaurants. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the danger that an event planner is taking when they put you on stage. Yeah. And so you just want to make, they have to protect that. And so they may want to see some type of video or something that gives them a sense of confidence. Like, okay, this person would do a good job for our event. So that's the E. The A is to
can I address something there real quick, which is the, so of course, you know, if you could go back in time and you have a video of you speaking in front of people, there's a certain energy, and that's better. I'm not making predictions. I just think we're at least we're probably a good even couple of years from like events being at capacity. You know, that's just human nature. But let's just say we're even 6 months from them being allowed. You know, arguably, I think that's certainly possible and not out of the realm of, you know, conceivability right now. So it's going to be 6 months. There's events coming up. You want to be a part of them. You don't have the sizzle reel, you know. How do you create one of those right now for the virtual landscape?
Yeah, so it's it feels like a chicken egg situation, right? You need gigs. You need gigs in order to get footage. You need footage in order to get gigs, right? So which comes first? And so a couple options. One is that you could find something, you know, some type of simple local thing that you could speak at for free, you know, and it could be ideally you want to do this in the same type of context or setting where someone would hire you to speak. Okay, and what I mean by that is, you know, if you're trying to get hired to speak to do something in person, then showing like a Facebook Live of a conversation that you did or an interview that you gave or something, like, it's a bit different, right? Like you can kind of get a sense of like, this person seems, you know, polished or professional or whatever, but it's a different vibe. So you could find something, whether that's going to be, you know, again, and like to your point, there's going to be, you know, much fewer opportunities at the moment, but it could be something where, you know, maybe there's maybe not some large scale conference, but maybe there may be like a chamber of commerce or like a Toastmasters or a Sunday school class at a church, you know, or something that's like a smaller scale, just like the point being like just to get something that you can work with. The other option that may be actually a little bit simpler right now, and this can seem a little bit weird, but we've seen a lot of speakers do this and can make this work, is that you speak to an empty room. Now, if you're going to do this, you want to, again, do this in the type of setting where someone would actually hire you to speak. So nobody's hiring you to speak in your kitchen or your bedroom or your living room. So, you know, don't record something there pretending like you're I'm talking to this big audience, like that dog needs to shut up. Like, no, like that's not the case. So don't do that. But I'll give you an example. Like, I had a demo video a couple years ago that was, you watch the whole thing, you never see anybody else in the shot. It's a nice stage, it's a nice setup. It's kind of, you know, a 45-minute talk condensed down to a couple minutes there, and it's a good video, but you never see anyone else. And so sometimes I've shown that before, and I've asked people like, how many people were in the room? And everyone's just throwing out guesses, you know, it's just like, I don't know, you know, 2 or 5, 10, 100, I don't know. Well, there's 3,000 people in the room, but you don't know, like you don't see anybody, you know? So the point being is there could have been nobody in the room and it would have been just fine. It would have worked well. And so you don't have to have all these like extra, you know, crowd shots or anything like that, or any of these extra things. So like a big thing we always tell speakers is to work with what you've got, do it with excellence, and improve as you go. So I'm like, fast forward to now, like I've had probably 7 or 8 different demo videos, and each time you get better footage and better quality footage and higher quality gigs and bigger audiences. Like your talk gets better, then you're getting better footage and better footage and better footage, and you can continue to improve. But like, again, early on, just start with what you've got, and then again, you can improve from there.
No, I like that. I think I was thinking specifically because everything is virtual right now, would it be more acceptable to do kind of a virtual, like, you know, set up a studio in your house or in your basement, like I'm in here, you know, and get some decent lighting, get a decent camera, and literally do a talk, straight to camera. Would that be feasible now, or should you still go and get like an empty, church or something where you can get up on stage?
Well, I mean, you could certainly do that, especially if you're trying to book virtual, because
Okay.
again, you want to remember one of the things that I've seen lately is that there are the speakers that are really going heavy into virtual and really doing a lot with virtual are creating marketing assets, pictures, language and copy on their website, and videos that reflect that they are a marketing or that they are a virtual speaker. Okay. Just because, and what I mean by that is like, just because you do a lot of speaking doesn't necessarily mean that people automatically assume that you do a lot of virtual speaking, right? Sure. So an analogy I've used before, it's like if you were planning a party or something, and I'll give you an example. Like my daughter, my middle daughter turns 12 on Saturday. All right. And so if I was like, okay, man, we want to have a party for her. We're looking for some really, really good cupcakes. And someone, I'm talking with someone. They're like, I got the baker for you. Here's the baker you need to use. And they send me over to such and such baker. And I look up their stuff, and it's all like, about baking bread, and they are an amazing baker, and they make the best bread. It's like, well, they're a good baker, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can bake cupcakes, right? Yeah. And so the same thing is true. Is like, just because you're a great speaker doesn't necessarily mean you're a great virtual speaker. And so what several speakers are doing, who are again really heavily going into virtual, not just like, hey, I'm just kind of dabbling in it, but really making sure that they have like a virtual demo video. So Matt, like in your case, if you said, if you did that type of setup and you gave a presentation and you condensed it down to a couple of minutes for a virtual demo video, like that would really work because it's reflective of what you're trying to get people to hire you to do. Okay, great. Now, again, that may or may not work if you're trying to get someone to hire you to speak to, 100 or 500 or 1,000 people, right? Because it's a different context. It's a different setting. So when an event planner or a decision maker is watching that demo video, whether it's a virtual demo video or an in-person one, you're trying to get them to think like, yeah, I could see them doing that for me. I could see what that would look like. And so if they're watching your virtual one thinking I'm looking for a virtual speaker, the event planner is probably going like, yeah, that's what I need right there. That speaker, right? But if they're watching that same video going, I have an audience of 500 people and I'm trying to picture how this will translate to that, then there may be a little bit of a disconnect there, right? So that's where I think being able to show the context of what you're trying to present really goes a long way.
Yeah. And I think that the beauty of that is that because everything's virtual for at least the next X number of months, the barrier to entry is, to your point earlier, is lower than it's ever been. Sure. You don't even need to go get the stage with the empty audience, which can still cost, money when somebody's trying to first get started, and you still need some decent shots. Like everybody's doing these things on Zoom now, and it's like, if you've got a good Zoom recording, a 3 or 4 minute good Zoom clip, you've got to, at least for the next few months, you've got to highlight, reel. Yeah. And then if you land a big gig and you spoke at, so-and-so's virtual event, well, it makes you much likelier to, land their physical event, when that comes. And now you get their physical event, which now means you have the footage. So yeah, I love that. I think the barrier to entry is lower than it's ever been. Robbie, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, you were giving us the SPEAK acronym. You gave us SPE. You want to share the A and the K?
Good call.
Robbie to get us back
or are they going to have to buy the book in order to
back on track? No, none of this. I'll give you the first 3. You got to buy the book crap. No. So the other 2. So select a problem to solve. The S, the P, prepare your talk. The E, establish yourself as the expert. The website and video. The A is to acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, having a process, a system, a formula that you're following to actually find and book gigs. Now, again, this is the part that people want to skip to, right? We want to acquire paid speaking gigs. Man, that's what I'm here for. Let's get to that, right? Yeah. But do you see why it's so important to have the other pieces in place first? Because for someone who's going like, well, who do you speak to? What do you speak about? I don't know, man. I just want to speak. It's like, all right, good luck with that. Like, what do you speak about? I don't know. What do you want me to speak about? All right. Do you have a website or video? Nah, I don't need those things. I just want to speak. It's like, all right, good luck. Like you got to have these
really
pieces
think
in
like
place.
that though. Seriously. I mean, I know they do.
I mean, sure. Because think about for so many people who enjoy speaking, who love speaking, we just want to speak, so we are equal opportunity speakers. Who do you want me to speak to? I want to speak to people. I'll speak to anybody. What do you want me to speak about? What do you want me to speak about? I'll speak about whatever, so it's just that's the way a lot of speakers, especially early on, because we just like it. We just like speaking. And so we're just looking for an at-bat, for an opportunity. But it's actually actually, again, it's counterintuitive, but the more narrow, the more clear, the more focused you are, the easier it is to actually find and book gigs versus just kind of being this generalist, this buffet. It's like I do everything and nothing at the same time. So the A is acquire paid speaking gigs, where you have, again, a system to actually be able to consistently find and book gigs, not just like waiting for things to fall in your lap. And then the last part of the process, the K, is to know when to scale. Know when to scale, meaning that a lot of people who are interested in speaking are also interested in writing or publishing or doing a course or coaching or consulting or doing a podcast or doing a Facebook Live or doing any number of things. And so we tell speakers all the time, like, you can do all the things, you just can't do all the things at once. Like, something's going to come first, something's going to come last. So you have to be really, really clear about how much speaking do you want to be doing and how does speaking fit into the rest of your business. The other thing I would say is that as you're kind of thinking that through, none of this you're making a permanent decision, right? You're not getting a tattoo here. So meaning that if you said, I want to do a whole bunch of, I'll give you an example from my own life. I used to just, again, speak pretty much full time. I was doing about 70 gigs a year. And now I do a handful of gigs a year, but the business looks vastly different. And so it's not like, well, I'm a full-time speaker, so that's the only thing I can ever do. In the same way that, there's been a lot of speakers who have done a ton of in-person physical on stage, and now all of a sudden that's not happening. So they've pivoted to virtual. And I know some of them are like, I want to keep doing virtual. And some of them have said to me, like, I'm just buying my time until live in-person events come back, because that's what I don't want to do the virtual thing. Nothing wrong with that, but I really want to do the in-person stuff. And again, there's not one that's better or worse. Like, you got to figure out what makes sense for you.
Makes sense. So I want to talk real quick. I love the sequence there. And we were having a team meeting right before this. We were talking about avatars, customer avatars, and it seems like that really is the starting point for literally anything. If you're creating a product, who's the avatar? You're creating a speech, who's the avatar? You're starting with the who, who are you helping and what problem are you solving?
Right.
If somebody is in that situation where they I gotta get out and speak. Like I know I have a message. I don't really know what the message is, but I know I have that passion for getting up on stage and for or speaking, in virtual events, whatever it is. How can they go about figuring out that problem that they want to solve, and then in the who they want to help? Like, what are some of the things that maybe you've helped some people do with that when they're just like, I really don't know. I just know I want to help people.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple different thoughts. One would be early on, it's okay if you want to, bounce around a little bit minimally, just to kind of get a sense of like, I think I'm interested in this, and I'm going to try this route, or I think I'm interested in that route. And like, if you need to try a couple things, just kind of get a sense of what those are like, that's fine. But ultimately, again, at some point you want to pick a path. And again, it's counterintuitive, but it actually makes it easier to find and book gigs the more narrow and focused you are. So let me give an example. Mm-hmm. Let's imagine that, God forbid, one of us needed brain surgery, right? You have a choice. Like, you could go to, your local family medical doctor, and they are a doctor. They went to medical school. They may have done some surgeries before. They know more about the brain than any of us do, but they've never done brain surgery. Or you could go to a brain surgeon where, like, day in and day out, like, that's what they do. If you got a bad cough, you don't go to them. You got a broken arm, you don't go to them. You got the Rona, you don't go to them. But if you got a brain issue, like, that's the doctor that you go to. Like, that's the surgeon that you go to. Is like, this is what I do. And again, it feels counterintuitive, but just like, it's easier to say, no, if you're a specialist, it's simpler to actually book the right type of gigs. Now, how do you figure out what that world looks like? Now, for most people, when you think about who do you speak to and what's the problem that you solve, most people are clear on one or the other. Okay. So, I come from the church world. And so therefore I know I want to do something in churches, but I don't know what I would speak about at churches, or I'm really passionate about customer service, but I don't really know who would be the best fit for, so we know one side of the equation or the other. And so a couple thoughts there. One would be that, again, you're not making a permanent decision. You're picking a starting point. It is much simpler to steer a car that is in motion than to steer a car that is in park. Okay. It's much simpler to steer a car that's in motion than to steer a car that's in park. Because for some people, they'll sit on the sideline and think, boy, I'm just gonna analyze, I'm just gonna think about it, I'm gonna make a pros and cons list, and I'm gonna do all the things to figure out who do I speak to and what's the problem that I'm going to solve. But until I feel 100%, I'm not gonna do anything. And they just never leave the shore. And they just sit and they sit and they sit and they sit. And listen, like, absolutely think about it, process it, do those sort of things. But at some point, like, dang, get off the bench and just make a decision. And so that's so important for speakers to do. So how do you figure out, again, what that starting point could be? One is to think about like your own passions. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What do you love? Other things are going to be like, what's your experience, right? So I'll give you an example. I think it was yesterday, I was talking with a speaker, and they came out of the tech industry and had done some stuff in the tech space. And he said he was really interested in speaking, like in if I remember correctly, like in medical or healthcare or something. And I was like, where does that come from? It seems like there's a lot of opportunities there. Do you have any experience there or anything? It's like, nah, not really. And it's like, all right, like, yeah, there's opportunities there, but you're automatically fighting an uphill battle. Like you versus like, let's start in tech where, like, the people, the associations, the groups, you've attended some of those events before. It doesn't mean that you can only speak to tech forever and ever and ever, but like, let's start here because at least you're familiar with it. You have some insider baseball lingo and knowledge there. So let's start there. And then again, over time, if you want to pivot, like, that's fine. But start with something, like, make it easy for you. What's the path of least resistance? What's the low hanging fruit where you can start to speak and get some at bat? So thinking through a couple different things. So inside the book, we talk about it in 3 different ways, kind of overlapping circles. So we talk about it in interest, industry, and integrity. Interest, industry, and integrity. So interest, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Also, as well as like, interest is a two-way street, meaning like, what do organizations and groups, what do they use to hiring speakers to talk about? Industry is like, what are common, like, where are people already gathering in that space? Just because like you're passionate about, man, I want to teach, people how to raise dogs to raise their children or something like that. Like, just because you're passionate about it, or just because you care about it, doesn't mean there's natural opportunities for you to speak on that. And then integrity, meaning like, what are you qualified to talk about? Now, it doesn't mean that you're the world's greatest expert on something, but what do you know something about? Like, what do you have some experience in, and that you could impart and share with other people? So, and again, I would stress that, like, again, you're not making a permanent decision. You're picking a starting point.
Yeah. And I think the integrity part of a lot of that is like, do you have a few stories that fit?
Sure.
To your point, you don't have to be the world. You don't have to have the white coat and the letters behind your name to speak about. Our friend Mary Barbera does have the letters behind her name, but there are many people that teach parents how to deal with autistic children that don't have letters behind their name, but they have experience.
Yep.
Like, I always joke, like, if you've ever gotten an autistic child to successfully fly cross country without disrupting the plane, you are qualified.
Yeah.
You are qualified to get up on stage and talk about that. You are qualified to build a platform around that. And that leads us kind of to our last question here, because I want to be respectful of your time, Grant. First of all, thank you so much.
You bet, man. Thank you.
This has been awesome, guys. And again, I encourage you, the link is in the chat there. Go grab a copy of this book. It's really not just about speaking. I will tell you, this actually helped me. Grant, you sent me a copy of this, and it was right before I was working on, this is before COVID, but I was working on a virtual event. And so, I mean, it's my event, it's just a live stream, 5 hours long. So it's not like I'm trying to book it. I'm not trying to get a gig. I'm not getting paid by anybody else. I don't have to convince them to hire me. None of the, like I'm on the S and the P, basically. Yeah. But there was something in there that helped me reformulate. I totally forget what it was. I'm gonna have to go find it because I know it's highlighted. There was something in there that I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember, being honest here, like, total transparency, I was sitting on the toilet reading the book.
It's good to know.
And I got up and like, I ran, like, normally, when I finished that, I'm like, I go in, I talk with the family. I ran downstairs, got on the computer, and was like working on the slides. There was something in there that, I have to go find it and share it with you later, but I was like, I got to update this right now. And I updated this, like a good chunk of like a couple of slides there. So it helped me out a bunch on something that had nothing to do with, quote unquote, public speaking. It was just,
and here's the reality is, like, not everybody wants to be a full-time speaker. That's fine. We totally get that, again, but a lot of people who are saying like, boy, I would love to speak 2 times, 3 times a year. And again, I don't know how to find those. Or, Matt, to your point, maybe I'm working on a presentation. We have several chapters on that, on working with slides and thinking through, storytelling and using humor and pauses and intros and outros and transitions and that sort of thing. And like, I'm working on, I don't want to be a, full-time speaker, but I got a presentation coming up for work and I'd really love to tighten that up a little bit. So there's several pieces there that we walk through that would be helpful for anybody that's given a presentation.
I just found it actually real quick. So it was, and actually I didn't even realize when I read this, and I think it was from Ray Edwards. You talk about some Ray Edwards shares here.
The open
method.
Yeah.
And as long as I've known Ray, I've never heard him talk about this. It was basically differentiating. I won't get too much into it. You guys need to get the book to get this, but the four, basically there's 4 places that people are at in terms of awareness of problems and what they need. And I realized that we weren't addressing 2 of those. Now that was the realization. I was like, and I know how to do it, and I ran downstairs and updated the slides. So thank you for that. Cool. So, we talked about a little bit about, kind of the crafting the message and we see that, and it's all in the book, guys, like, how to get on the stages, how to get the gigs, how to, get in front of the right audiences and all that stuff, and ultimately how to get paid. But you have used this to build an actual successful business, which is ultimately what our audience is doing. And so I just want you to maybe speak to that. Like, what are some of the ways? I think the authority side is pretty self-explanatory. When you speak at the big events in your industry, you get that authority. But what are some of the ways, like, directly you can use speaking to turn into sales opportunities, to turn into actual monetization, to turn into, cash money, as we might say?
Yeah. So you're right when it comes to like the authority, the credibility piece. There's still, when we go to an event and we see a speaker on stage, there's a certain amount of recognition, of prestige that we ascribe to that person, and we just think, well, if they're up on stage, then they must know what they're talking about. I was yesterday I was on a coaching call. And there's a lady who said, "Hey, I bought this program because I saw you speak at something back in November. So this was nice. 8 months ago, something like that." I was like, "Really? No way." And I kind of vaguely remembered meeting her. And it's something about, like, again, when we're all, hanging out here in this virtual type of setting, it's nice, but like when you meet people in person, like it just changes the dynamic of things, So, I've met both of you guys in person, and it changes things. Right. And so when especially when you're able to do that in a live in person setting, and then again, it may not be a 1,000 person conference. It could be a small workshop or breakout or whatever it may be. But even still in virtual, when you have a chance to interact or connect with someone, like that goes a long way to just building some rapport and connection with them. Like at the end of the day, like all of us, we still do business with people we know, like, and trust. And so it's much easier to build that when you're able to kind of interact with them, whether it's from an interview or speaking from stage or a podcast interview or whatever it may be. But you're able to build a lot of that connection. So yeah, credibility, authority, networking is really good, both for the audience, but also for other speakers who may be at a certain event. Lead generation. So if you have, like this one that I mentioned before, of this lady that bought something for an event that I spoke at months ago, where it wasn't necessarily intentional, but generated indirectly revenue for the company and for me because of that speaking gig. Even something like this, where we've talked about the book a few times, and there may be people who end up buying the book, and so that it indirectly creates value for our company and for selling books. So there's a lot of different ways that like you can generate revenue from speaking. That doesn't always necessarily have to be as black and white as like whether you got a check or you didn't get a check. So speaking can bring a lot of different value in a lot of different ways.
Good stuff, man. So guys, again, go get the book, The Successful Speaker. Links in the comments, mattmcclanish.com/successful speaker. Go grab that, devour it, take good notes, pay attention. I just shared it, especially page 53. I will tell you guys, if you watch some of our content since about, I don't know, February-ish, whenever I got the book, if you watch our content then and look at page 53 and what Grant wrote in there, just email me, because I think you'll see some of the differences in how we are now addressing people at different stages. And it's actually been really cool because I didn't get a chance to say this, but we've done it with like a bunch of stuff since then. So
that's cool.
It's been, I was like, if that's all I got, I was like, if I had just turned to page 53, I'd been like, this is the best book ever. So, so Grant, man. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Robbie. Appreciate it, guys.
Good to see
See
you.
you guys.
Good to see you
Bye.
guys.